to Crossfire, the show that dives into the heart of global conflicts, where nations collide, alliances shift, and lives hang in the balance. On tonight's show, we'll tell you about a chilling new warning from Syria's Uyghur Muslims. The group, who had a lot to do with the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime, has now vowed to come after China. Also on the show, we uncover Israel's decade-long spy operation that turned out to be a huge blow for the Hezbollah group. Stay tuned as we break down these critical developments and explore their impact on the future of global power and security. A new and alarming threat emerges from the heart of Syria, one that could change the global security landscape. Uyghur militants, once focused solely on their fight for independence in China's Xinjiang region, are now wanting to take their battle straight to Beijing. The Turkistan Islamic Party, entrenched in Syria's brutal civil war, has declared its intention to target China. But is this just a war cry or a serious challenge to China's power? Our next report decodes this for you.
A new threat emerges from the heart of Syria. Uyghur militants, once confined to their fight for independence in China's Xinjiang region, are now vowing to take their battle straight to Beijing. The Turkistan Islamic Party, a group of Uyghur fighters entrenched in Syria's brutal civil war, declared their intention to make China their next target. But this isn't just an empty threat. The TIP has played a significant role in the Syrian conflict, helping to overthrow Bashar al-Assad's regime. These militants have long fought on foreign soil, gaining experience, weapons, and a growing resolve. And now they are sending a message to China. The TIP, which has been operating in Syria for over a decade, has issued a direct threat to Beijing from the very heart of West Asia. In a recently released video, a purported TIP fighter showed off the arms captured from the Syrian armed forces and how they are going to use that to come after China.
Manda Kurallan etvatkan Şarkı Türkistan mücahitleri. İnşallah pat yakında beşini yiysin.
The TIP's statement comes as their forces have been on the front lines of Syria's civil war, battling Assad's regime and aligning themselves with other Islamist factions. But who exactly are the TIP fighters? The group, which was established in the 1990s, has long been calling for the independence of East Turkestan, their region known to Uyghurs as their homeland. Forced out of China due to the government's brutal crackdown, the TIP has sought regime in Syria, where they found a platform to voice their grievances and take action.
اخوانكم المهاجرين من تركستان الشرقيه، بعض كلكم سمعاني تركستان الشرقيه، بعضكم سمعاني تركستان الشرقيه، تركستان الشرقيه طبعا هو حاليا تحت احتلال صيني منذ 65 70 سنه، والحمد لله رب العالمين. هناك اخوانكم المسلمون اهل السنه 35 40 مليون نسمه كلهم اهل السنه، الحمد لله رب العالمين. نحن أبناء تركستان الشرقية الحمد لله رب العالمين، وربنا تبارك وتعالى من علينا وسهل لنا طريقا إلى سبيله سبحانه وتعالى، وكنا هاجرنا من بلدنا، والأصل أخرجونا من بلدنا وظلمونا وقتلونا وسجنونا وأخرجونا من بلدنا وتركنا البلد وأتينا، والحمد لله رب العالمين. شفنا أهل الشام ما شاء الله، أهل الكرم أهل الجود، الله يجزيكم الخير.
TIP's propaganda has been ramping up in recent days, with videos showing their fighters in full battle gear, celebrating their victories over Assad's forces. On December 10th and 11th, TIP fighters claimed to have entered the strategic port cities of Latakia and Tartus, cities that were once under Russian control. Now, the TIP statements are not just a rallying cry for Uyghur independence. They are a direct challenge to Beijing, whose aggressive stance on Uyghurs has drawn international condemnation. Over 1 million Uyghurs have been forced into re-education camps, with thousands more imprisoned for simply practicing their faith. This oppression has driven many to flee their homeland, and some have found their way to the battlefields of Syria, where they now vow to take the fight back to China. But will TIP's threat materialize? Experts are divided on whether the group has the resources, manpower, and training to launch meaningful attacks against China. While Beijing has long used TIP as a pretext for its crackdown on the Uyghurs, the reality of a direct confrontation between TIP and China seems far from certain. After all, China's military might is formidable, with over 2 million active duty soldiers and advanced technology at their disposal. Still, the TIP's actions cannot be ignored. This is not just a battle for independence, it's a message to the world that the Uyghur struggle is far from over. So, what does this mean for the future? Will TIP's promise to strike China from the heart of Syria spark a new front in the global jihad? For China, this marks a new and unsettling reality, where battles fought thousands of miles away could soon threaten their own borders.
A dangerous new chapter is unfolding in West Asia. The White House warns that a weakened Iran could soon be on the brink of developing a nuclear bomb. As Tehran's power erodes, its key allies dwindle and regional influence falter, the US is on high alert. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has also briefed President-elect Donald Trump, urging him to be prepared for a potential nuclear escalation. So will the US take action, or will Israel lead the charge in stopping Iran's nuclear ambitions? Our next report unpacks this for you.
A dangerous new chapter in West Asia is unfolding. The White House warns that a weakened Iran may be on the verge of building a nuclear bomb. The threat, not just an empty promise, but a real possibility. As Iran loses its grip on key allies and its regional power weakens, the US is increasingly worried that Tehran may turn to nuclear weapons as a last line of defense. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has briefed President-elect Donald Trump on the growing threat, urging him to be prepared for what could be a nuclear escalation. And if the Trump administration decides to act, the option of airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities is reportedly on the table. With tensions already high in the region, how far will the US and its allies respond to Iran's nuclear ambitions? Iran's regional position has been severely weakened over the past several years. Israeli airstrikes have hit key Iranian-backed groups like Hamas in Palestine and Hezbollah in Lebanon, while Iran's support for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad is now in jeopardy after his regime bites the dust. Tehran's influence is flattering, and the vacuum of power could lead Iran to pursue even more drastic measures. This includes the possibility of fast-tracking the nuclear weapons program as a form of self-defense. This is where the US comes in. Joe Biden's national security advisor has made it clear that Iran's potential to build nuclear weapons is a significant concern. In a recent briefing, Sullivan warned the incoming Trump administration about the increased risk of Iran abandoning its pledge not to pursue nuclear weapons. The White House has described this as a risk they're taking very seriously, given the growing instability in West Asia. To make matters worse, the UN's atomic regulator has recently reported that Iran is edging closer to being able to develop nuclear weapons. With Iran's uranium production levels soaring, the country is now operating at the brink of becoming a nuclear-armed state. This is despite international sanctions and efforts to halt its progress. As President-elect Trump prepares for his second term, the administration is reportedly weighing military action. Airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities are being discussed as a potential way to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. Trump has also had recent discussions with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, expressing grave concern over Iran's nuclear capabilities. With Tehran's nuclear ambitions threatening global security, the world waits to see if the Trump administration will take decisive action or if the responsibility will fall on Israel's shoulders.
A game-changing operation, years in the making, is now out in the open. Israel's defense minister claims the country has decimated Hamas and Hezbollah. The twist? Walkie-talkies and pagers rigged with explosives. Mossad's covert mission used deception, shell companies and carefully timed explosions to devastate Hezbollah's ranks and cripple their command. Will Israel's enemies on the ropes? The big question now is, how far will Israel go to finish what it started? Our next report tells you more.
Time is running out for Israel's enemies. The defense minister now claims that Israel has destroyed Hamas, Hezbollah, and toppled the Syrian president's regime.
נפגע בתשתיות אסטרטגיות שלו ונערוף את ראש מנהיגיו בדיוק כמו שעשינו להניע סינואר ונסראללה בטהרן, עזה ובלבנון, נעשה בחודדה ובצנעא.
And now, shocking details have surfaced, revealing how Israel's walkie-talkie and pager explosions left the militant group in ruins. The story of this decade-long covert operation is nothing short of a thriller. It is based on the accounts of ex-Mossad agents. It involved deception, trickery, shell companies, and explosives triggering the fall of Hezbollah. But how did Israel carry out such an operation? Well, the devil lies in the details. The story began over a decade ago, when Mossad agents started developing a highly unusual weapon, a walkie-talkie modified with an explosive device. The idea was simple: to weaponize a device that would not be suspected and is used by Hezbollah fighters. But getting these walkie-talkies into Hezbollah hands wasn't easy. A believable story had to be created. So, shell companies and fake production lines were set up to infiltrate the global supply chain. Then, prices had to be set right. It could not be too cheap so as to avoid suspicion, and not too high so as to avoid pricing Hezbollah out of the deal. A similar strategy was followed for pagers too in 2022. The challenge here was to build a device which was big enough to hide the explosive, but small enough for Hezbollah to carry without suspicion. And after multiple tests, Mossad engineers succeeded at that. They even set the pager's ringtone carefully to ensure that it was compelling enough for militants to pull them out of their pockets. Now, the task was to get these into the hands of Hezbollah fighters. For this, fake companies were set up and salespeople linked to Hezbollah were hired. Pagers were touted as high-tech devices in the market, with fake advertisements vouching for the dust-proof, waterproof, and long-lasting qualities. These advertisements were so convincing that even non-Hezbollah began placing orders. And soon, the walkie-talkies and pagers produced in Mossad facilities in Israel found their way into Hezbollah's hands. Cut to September 2024. Hezbollah had thousands of these pagers in its possession. Then, September 18, 2024, marked the turning point in this operation. The pagers, which had been silently waiting, were activated. That day, the pagers began to beep, signaling their deadly nature. Explosions rang out across Lebanon, injuring dozens of Hezbollah fighters and instilling fear throughout their ranks. Mossad agents had carefully planned the timing. The goal wasn't mass destruction, but to inflict just enough damage to disrupt Hezbollah's command structure and instill fear among their soldiers. And one day later, Mossad activated the walkie-talkies, which sent another wave of panic through Hezbollah's ranks. The total death toll reached around 30, including 2 children, with more than 3,000 people injured. The results were swift and profound. Mossad's operation shattered the group's sense of invincibility and morale, and within days, Israeli airstrikes hit targets across Lebanon, killing over 1,000 people. Then on September 27, a bomb targeted Nasrallah's bunker, effectively neutralizing the leader. The Mossad operation weakened Hezbollah and in turn reduced Iran's influence in the region. The lesson was clear. October 7 attack, which caught Israel off guard, had dealt a major blow to the country's intelligence agencies. And now they are not willing to back down until they hold their enemies at their mercy.
Well, that's all we have for you in this edition of Crossfire. Stay tuned to India Today Global, where we simplify geopolitics for you.